Good morning, guys. I got a tankless here we're gonna flush, and I just want to show you how I do it, and you learn a little bit every time. So okay, we got a problem. I found a leak.
If this video is helpful to you, please remember to like and subscribe.
Just want to make a video and kind of share procedure of how to do it and get it done right. Really, technically, you start by turning off the hot. You can turn them both off. Just if you're using vinegar, turn them both off. So there's our tankless. We've got our isolation valves and our ports. This one doesn't have a drop tube. We'll be installing one of those. This is standard South Carolina installation on the outside of the house. We have an extension cord. We have a bucket with a small pump. We've got some of these washer hoses. I think they're 6-foot washer hoses with the right angles, which makes it really nice. I have this brass piece on here. This is just a weight to hold it in the bucket. This is going to be our discharge hose. And then our pump, I believe this is a Little Giant 505-723. This works really nice. Okay, it's just got another one of those 6-foot wash machine hoses with the right angle. We've got some calcium-free tankless, which is certified for use in this situation. We do have to flush it for 5 minutes before we turn it on to the house. Flat screwdriver, adjustable wrench. I think they call them pump pliers, technically. We got some silicone grease for the O-ring and an old toothbrush to clean the inlet filter. We'll get into all that later. I'll show you what we do here. We're gonna get a bucket over here. Gonna take your pump and we're gonna attach it to the cold blue line. So we got our pump going into our blue, the cold inlet side. And we're just gonna snug it up. Now I already have the valves off. So I would start by turning the main valves off, which is right here. Turn both of those off. We're gonna take our discharge hose. This is, like I said, this is just an old brass check valve left over from a repair. That's just a weight to keep the end of the hose down in the bucket. We're gonna attach it to the red hot outlet side of the water heater. Snug it up. And once again, our return line into the bucket is on the hot side. Now we are going to take our, this is a powder. Now if you're using vinegar, this is when you'd pour your vinegar in. But we're using the flush powder. Get that in our bucket. Let's get you over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to run hot water into our bucket, which will help this stuff dissolve. If you were using vinegar, you wouldn't be running any water at all. Okay, so but we're using the flushing powder today. Once again, this is the calcium-free tankless water heater flush. We're going to let it run 20 minutes instead of 45 to an hour for vinegar, which is why we're using this, because it's literally 20 minutes, especially if it's one that's been done regularly. So first of all, now I have not turned the water heater off. This is how I do it, because we're going to run some hot water. We are going to turn the cold inlet back on for now, which really technically you start by turning off the hot. You can turn them both off. Just if you're using vinegar, turn them both off. We're using this powder, so normally I only turn the hot off. We want to isolate the tankless water heater from the house. So this is the first step. Turn this off, and this will be the very, very last step when everything is done, is to turn that back on. So first step, last step. Just remember that. So we are going to now turn this on, and we're going to get some hot water in our bucket. So, like I said, water heater is still on. We're going to run some hot water. Only run 2 gallons of water in the bucket. I'm not going to run that much hot. Run it up about a gallon, okay? So at this point, now I'm going to shut the water heater off. So that's going to be right here. We're going to flip it off. And we're going to go ahead and run our last gallon of water in our bucket, which is still hot, coming out of the water heater. Right to the top of the pump is what I usually do. Then we're going to close our cold inlet side. And at this point, we can open them both. Okay, so we have both isolation valves closed, and we have both ports open. And we're going to mix this. I want to make sure all this solution is dissolved. If you happen to use it, usually about the time it turns clear is when it's dissolved. Looks like I have a little floater in here. What do we got? You don't want a bunch of junk in this bucket, so. Definitely want to use gloves. This is acidic, which vinegar is the same. I would call this slightly more acidic than vinegar because it will definitely burn your hand. Alright, so we're going to agitate that till it's all dissolved really well. And as you can see, we are pretty much all dissolved. That warm water really makes a difference in getting that dissolved. So get our discharge hose down in the bucket. Okay, so we have our 2 gallons of water with our solution. If this was vinegar, I would do 3 to 4 gallons of vinegar. And we're now going to plug it in. Blowing the air out. Okay, so we're going to check and make sure we have good flow, which we do. Looks good. Alright, so we're going to set a timer for 20 minutes. And we'll be back. Alright guys, I'm just checking in. It's been about 10 minutes. You can see all the oxidation from the copper heat exchanger coming through. Plenty of scale in there. One more thing we're going to do on this. Normally would have done right away, but it doesn't need that long for it to actually work. We're going to loosen this gently. Now, I'm using pliers on this because I know what I'm doing. You have to be careful. You don't want to just squish this. Sometimes they're hard to turn. This one's really easy to turn. Generally, they are easy to turn in our area. If you have a lot of scale and this hasn't been done, even if it has been done, you can get a lot of scale built up, a lot of white around us where these things sometimes will leak because unfortunately most guys that flush these don't know to lube the O-ring, which leads to the O-ring leaking and failing. But what we're going to do, we're going to get our flat screwdriver. Everything's running still, And we're going to stand back a little bit because sometimes these can spurt a little water. We're going to loosen this just enough to break the O-ring seal and get some of the solution to leak out, which will clean all these threads. Okay, now that I've got it dripping a little bit, what I'm doing is I'm taking the flat screwdriver, and you can see it has this little rib in here. This is a Renai, so, and I'm just gently turning it. This will not break it as long as you are easy with it. So just keep that in mind. You have to be gentle. Once again, loosen it till it leaks, and then we're going to tighten it up just to where it stops. And that little bit of solution hanging out right here, that is going to clean all those threads, and that valve and that filter housing is going to clean it up really nicely. And then when we're done, we're gonna clean this filter in here, and we're gonna lube the O-ring. And next time it's gonna come out real easy, and you won't need some fancy wrench. If you're needing a wrench to loosen or tighten it, it's because your O-ring is leaking, first of all, and you probably need to do it more often if you have that much scale. So we don't have a ton of scale. This is actually city water system. And anyway, back for the wait. Guys, gonna jump in with one more intermission before our flush is done. We're gonna get this drop tube put on here on our TNP valve. Now, some of you are gonna freak out. 3/4 PEX, you can't use that on a TNP discharge. It's not 3/4 ID. Well, I'm sorry, in our area, this is how they do it. And this is how they inspect it and pass it. So this is what we do. So different areas are different. They enforce code different. This is what they do here. And I'm gonna use a wrench and tighten it up, don't worry. So we're down here close to the ground, within 6 inches from the ground. And anyway, we're gonna get that put on. All right, we've reached our 20-minute mark. So let's unplug this pump. First thing I'm going to do, since this is the solution, we are going to push it all out of the heater. So what I'm about to show you is for using the solution, because we need to take that and dispose of it according to regulations. So you need to find out what proper disposal procedure is for your area if you use this. So at this point, I want to get it all out of the heater. So we're going to shut the cold port off, and we're going to open the cold inlet valve, not the hot. Remember, the hot is last. And we're going to flush all the solution out of the heat exchanger into the bucket. Okay, so let's do that. We'll flush a little bit out of here just to get it out of the hose. Bucket's getting full. That's plenty. All right, so I'm going to go dispose of this, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back with an empty bucket, and I'm going to utilize the water coming out of these to go ahead and finish cleaning everything. Rinse this all down. A lot of that is just the oxidized copper from the heat exchanger. Okay, so we're going to close our cold inlet back off, and there's no solution left. We're just going to dump this out somewhere where we won't get muddy. So this is all purged. Make sure our pump is all purged out. You want to make sure your hoses and your pump, everything is cleared of solution, especially if it's vinegar too. All right, so now we are going to take our hoses off. Get my pump pliers here. Okay, so bye-bye, we're done with you. Okay, make sure these aren't full of water. Since it is outside, a little freeze that we do get here and there, you don't want these full of water. Of course, that little bit of water wouldn't have hurt, but some isolation valves, actually you have to put the cap on and turn it and it's full of water because there's only one valve. We'll get into that later at some point in another video. This one is easy to do. Okay, so cold isolation valve still off. We need to clean this filter up here. Remember that. All right, get our flat screwdriver again, which is stuck in the dirt and dirty. So let's clean that off. This was already loosened because we put the solution in it, or allowed the solution to clean it. Little junk on it. Let's set that up and clean that off with the hose. But I'll show you what I do. Since it's outside, we'll just turn that on a little bit. And normally I would take it off, but I'm holding my phone to video this, so it's kind of hard to do since I don't have a third hand. But anyway, nice and clean. Let's shut that back off. Okay, silicone grease. We are going to lube this O-ring. Don't forget to lube the O-ring. It's going to make it come out easier next time. And keep the O-ring from getting worn out because you're putting it in dry. Okay? So, got silicone grease on the O-ring. Make sure it's on the filter side of the O-ring so it will spread as it goes in. All right? Now, let's go ahead and put him back in there. And believe it or not, I can put it in by hand, finger tight, and it will go all the way in because it has silicone grease on it. You don't need to tighten it. There's no need to tighten that down with anything other than your fingers if it's clean and lubed. Now, if you have a lot of scale in your area and it just ain't working for you, then a gentle persuasion with the flat screwdriver without breaking it and cracking it, you could do that. Okay, everything is still off. We got everything cleaned, everything's purged. Cold water inlet on, and we are going to flush this thing for 5 minutes out of the T&P valve, okay? Out here on the ground. Now, first thing I want to do before I kick it on, I need to make sure it's full of water. So let's make sure the unit is full of water first. Get any air out. All right. Let's kick that unit back on. Wait for it to start up. All right, our unit has started up. We are ready. Now we're gonna purge this thing for 5 minutes. I do it with it running. That way water is going through everything in here and you don't have any solution trapped in anything. I think technically they say do it with the water heater off. So I've already done that. We've already purged it out, as you can see a minute ago. Now we're doing our 5 minute purge to make sure all the residue is out, according to the instructions. We actually read the instructions. So about 5 minutes. So we'll check back in a minute. All right, guys, we have done our 5 minute purge and we are ready to go. Once again, these are off, these are capped. Obviously cold is on. Now, last step. If you remember what that is, the last step is turning our hot isolation valve back on to the house. All right, don't forget that, because the customer or yourself might be like, why don't I have hot water? Why don't my shower work? Okay, so if you've watched to this point and this has helped you, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting. Thank you so much.